Are we live? We are
Says so.
live. God, Google Plus sucks today. Hello, hello, hello. This is Heretical Weekends number 21, the Supernatural Causation show, I guess. I don't have a real good name for this one. The Supernatural show is kind of vague, so I just went with Supernatural Causation.
21 episodes our show can drink now.
I know, right? A drunk show would be great, even though for me it's 11, so I'd have to do it mimosa style, but you haven't lived till you've heard a drunk, mischievous heathen. You know how I just normally talk shit? Now it's just like that times 10. So this is the Supernatural show. What kind of brought this about for me was, um, in my day-to-day life, uh, there's a lot of shenanigans that goes on as far as like, and I really think it's a part of the human brain, to find like that pattern. We're trying to find, it's like the human brain will accept a stupid explanation versus like, an I don't know kind of thing. And I'll give you an example. Like this is like a month ago or a couple months ago, but someone that I know who worked at a restaurant said, I think the place that we work at is haunted because like a blender or a box fell off a shelf. And no one can explain why it fell off the shelf. And in my head, I'm just kind of like, okay.
Jesus pushed
And
it.
right, yeah. And so it's amazing to me that people will, I mean, first of all, I just want whenever I say, well, I'm okay. So your first explanation is a disembodied spirit decided to shove a a kitchen appliance off for what that makes complete sense. There's a whole it's just fuck Occam's razor. We're just gonna go with ghost because that makes more sense than reality.
Gravity.
Yeah, or gravity, right? It's something I, and it's pretty typical in the circles that I travel in for people to do stuff like that. And maybe it's just, a Los Angeles thing, you know what I mean? But it got me thinking. There was a hangout somewhere where somebody was talking about supernatural causation as well. It triggered a memory because I've been meaning to do a show on this for a while. But, there are a lot of different ways this generally takes place, but in the great debate community, it tends to focus on God because there's a bunch of crazy fucking religious people on here that they're religious. So enough said there. But it's just amazing to me that people will come up with quote unquote supernatural reasoning before attempting to find an actual like reason based in reality. It just goes right to there. And I think I may have had a brief discussion back and forth with either Fox or Gabby, but I kind of think of the whole notion of even appealing to the quote-unquote supernatural is almost on the verge of begging the question, if not begging the question itself, but we'll get to that a little later. So what do you guys think? What wackadoo stories have you heard?
Go ahead, Gav.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I tend to just probe different communities and things all the time, just because I find it interesting and entertaining both. I mean, one of the most interesting things for me was stumbling across a hangout where people were supposedly channeling lizard, or what do they call them, reptilian aliens from another dimension. And they had this guy on there with a thick German accent who was also speaking with what I guess they perceived as a reptilian accent, and they would ask him questions, and he would, with weird, slurry speech, be answering them, and they were taking this totally seriously. Um, you know, I sat and listened. I didn't interrupt while they were broadcasting because it was a live hangout. But apparently they do this on a semi-regular basis. I don't know how frequently. I guess, the human brain can only channel from a different realm for just so long before he becomes overcome or something. I don't know. But
Yeah, it's tiring work, I'd
yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
What do you guys think is the reason for appealing to something supernatural first without even?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily first. I think we have patterns built in our brain where we look for causation and we look for intention, and so it's just built into our brain through evolution. And I think people just I don't know if it's always first, but they think these things exist, so they're part of the equation. So if you assume that ghosts exists and something falls, then and you don't have another explanation off the top of your head, well, then it could be ghosts. I think it's ghosts. I just think there's these things that are part of. I mean, the reptilian thing is obviously more outside of the norm than ghosts or gods or anything, but there's these things that are part of our culture that people just kind of, even if it's kind of a vague belief in them, have these beliefs in them, and they run across these oddball incidences, and they think that they're a good explanation for it. But
why is it a good explanation for it?
Well, it's an explanation. Like,
and that's what I'm saying. They'll take a stupid explanation over over an I don't know or.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think some of it is kind of that they enjoy the feeling of believing in these kind of like higher powers, and there's this whole other dimension and other world going on. I think part of it is kind of I hesitate to call it like a fun factor, but I think there is this sense of mystery and awe that they get out of this kind of thing, that they want this stuff to exist.
Well, and there's who is it B.F. Skinner, the psychologist, or
I thought he was a behaviorist.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he has demonstrated how pigeons that get food dropped into their cages at random intervals become superstitious and will like repeat behaviors that they think were somehow related to the dropping of the food. So like if the food drops when the pigeon is doing a right turn, it's going to continue turning right, and then that gets reinforced because they think it works, and then they start turning right. Well, when the next one drops, they're like, oh, it's because I was turning right. On whatever level a pigeon can have that kind of cognition, but
pattern recognition.
Yeah, exactly, and so we see this in humans all around the world. There's a culture in this Dobu Island, which is I think in part of the Papua New Guinea chain of islands. Their culture is documented in a couple of books, and I've heard it referenced more than I've heard directly about it. But I looked up a little bit. Their culture interprets just all kinds of normal everyday events as witchcraft, and they think that witches or black magic were involved with all kinds of things. I mean, they're like, and then it's what's really weird is the things that they kind of leave out. So like a kid trips, oh, he's just clumsy, but somebody spills water, that's witchcraft. Somebody caught fish. Well, witchcraft. It was good witchcraft that helped them. So they have all these elaborate rituals that they go through before they go out fishing or whatever. And then when they don't catch fish, it's also witchcraft is what caused that. And it's bizarre. But it's this kind of thing. And so when it becomes so ingrained in them that they're afraid to even try to not evoke these things and go through these rituals because you know, they've heard stories. Well, when somebody didn't do that, a bad thing happened, and so well, I'm not going to risk it. It's that same kind of almost Pascal's wager kind of thing. Like, well, something bad might happen if you don't go through with it. So
Yeah,
better.
I mean, even in like Greek and like Roman, like the Romans, like they were against like the Jews and Christians because they wouldn't worship their gods and whatever, and so like those groups were ostracized and persecuted because basically the same mentality of like, well, they're not participating in all of these acts which we know help bring in the rain and help the crops and all this stuff. And so I mean it's just a matter of our society kind of slowly, painfully grew out of some of that,
See, okay, let me field something to you guys, and maybe I'm wrong here, so you can help. You can help point this out to me, because you guys are smarter than me, I think, in this stuff. At least Gabby is. I don't know about Turtle.
Nah.
Turtle's the smartest one of all of us.
Turtle's just a musician, so. So I had a comment exchange where I brought up somebody was talking about something. It wasn't necessarily God. It was more like just the supernatural. And I'm confused on something. How does one even appeal to the supernatural without assuming the supernatural to begin with? I mean, okay. Follow me. Try to follow me on this one.
Okay.
So, if you believe in the supernatural or supernatural causation or whatever, right? Like we'll say ghosts, for example, on this one. On some level, there's another realm or some place where the ghosts are, right? Either they're trapped here on Earth in some quasi state, or you know what I mean? Does that make any sense? Like there's okay. So humans, you have humans, which are, for the sake of this argument, for right now, biologically natural creatures, correct? For now. I'm not saying they don't have okay, just go with me on that one.
Okay.
So how does one even arrive at the conclusion that the supernatural exists when, by definition, it's quote-unquote beyond nature, beyond the natural, this and that? You would either have to, and I don't want to create a dichotomy, which is kind of what I'm kind of getting at, but if you are a natural creature, how does one even perceive that without assuming it to begin with? Or B, if you're claiming that you can perceive it in a certain way beyond your five senses, then wouldn't that need to be demonstrated as well?
Well, I mean, but I think you're kind of assuming most people who believe in either God or ghosts don't think we're just biological beings. They think we have these supernatural spirits inside of these biological machines, basically. Like
right, but that would need to be demonstrated then, is what I'm saying.
But they're not interested in that.
No. Well, that's the problem that I have. It's like, if you're in the B class, then that would have to be demonstrated to be taken seriously, at least to me, on some level.
But these people aren't interested in being taken seriously with anybody who's serious. They want to be taken seriously by other people who also already agree with them, basically, for the most part.
Yeah.
So they're theists.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily theists, but like I think even the term supernatural is a kind of strange misnomer because if let's assume for a second that ghosts or gods are in fact real, like why wouldn't they just be natural? Like if, for instance, the Christian God is a real thing, is he not the most natural thing that exists? Isn't everything else like subnatural then? Just
well, depends on who
technically.
you ask.
Well, yeah, I mean.
But I mean, like he is the only thing that existed, And then, so isn't he the most natural thing?
I get what you're saying, kind of.
Well, but it depends. It also depends on how you define natural. So, like, a lot of people would define natural as uh, consisting of matter and energy, in the sense that a scientist might use those terms, and then also that the natural world is essentially bound by the laws of nature. And so these people would say that most believers would say that their God, especially monotheistic religions, would say that their God is above and beyond this material realm, so to speak, and and that he's not bound by the laws of physics and chemistry and so on.
Sure.
Yeah,
I
but
guess I guess it depends on that definition. But to me, when I think of natural, I think of like the most basic state, like as opposed to, for instance, like man-made or something like that. Whereas to me, a god, whether it's the Christian god or if it's like Zeus or whatever, those things would be more natural than, like, because then essentially the matter and all that is merely a subset of that god. It's merely something derived from that god. Like all the laws of nature that we experience are merely the limitlessness of God, and he has taken a subsection of that limitlessness and then put us into it. But I guess that's a matter of interpretation.
there's no problem with interpretation of religion, Turtle. You know that.
True, true.
Everybody agrees. I guess the problem I have too is supernatural as a term is really misdefined. So something beyond nature doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what that means, and when I ask people what that means, they tend to give me some sort of superfluous answer, like it's just beyond what we can perceive. It's something else. And I'm like, all these things don't make any sense to me. They're just these.
Here's my rule of thumb. When somebody says supernatural, I immediately assume make believe.
Well, well, yeah, but but do you ever kind of look at them and you just have that look on your face like, cool story, bro?
It depends on the circumstance. So, like, one of the moves that I've tried to make is, a lot of times this appeal to a supernatural realm or what have you is there as an explanation, because there's always this portion of reality that even with science we can't explain. For example, why the law of gravity works as it does. Why the laws of nature. And so people will say, well, it has to be dependent on something beyond, and so this is the supernatural realm or supernatural being. And so my response when that comes is, well, that makes sense. I understand that. Obviously, that the natural realm is dependent upon the supernatural realm, and that is why you have to posit an ultranatural deity to explain the existence of the supernatural deity. And they want to go, oh, no, it just shuts down after that. After the supernatural, there's nothing beyond that. Well, how do you know? You can just keep piling it on, and it just, this is to explain the stuff we don't understand on this level, and let's add some other things to explain the stuff that goes on the other level that we can't tangibly perceive and don't really have any good evidence that it's even there. So
now, if something interacts or manifests in reality, as I hear sometimes on the internet, can it be as soon as it interacts with reality as we perceive it, isn't it therefore testable?
Yes, in that specific instance.
Right.
Like if you're talking about a ghost that knocks over a coffee can or whatever, yeah, I mean that's something that could be but the problem is, and the get out of jail free card is that they don't like, there's kind of no rules for ghosts. Like they can sometimes walk through walls, but sometimes they can knock things over. So they can interact with reality when they want to, apparently, and then they can just avoid the laws of physics when they want to as well. So
Sometimes they can inhabit Whoopi Goldberg and move pennies.
But that's the thing. It's that when you ask people about, let's say, the coffee can and the ghost thing, I get 2 different explanations, or 3 or 5, or it's like you said. Sometimes you talk to certain people, they say, well, ghosts are they're spirits and they're trapped here, and they're just repeating the same 30 seconds of whatever, you know what I mean, or they're going through the motions, and then you ask somebody else and they go, well, they don't know that they're here, and they're just, and then they ask the person and they're like, well, yeah, they came to visit you because that used to be the old owner of the restaurant, and then he died 40 years ago. Like, there's no consistency at all with explanations.
No, there isn't.
And that's the part that boggles my mind, that someone can. And then you get the funny thing is, when I was told that story, I have this look where I just stare at them like blankly, and within like 5 seconds they sort of know that they go, don't look at me like that, that kind of thing. But when I give someone that look, they look at me like I'm the crazy one, like, what do you mean you don't believe that the ghost knocked over a coffee can? Like that, like just out of the gate, I'm not going to go, oh, sure, it was a ghost. That makes complete sense.
I think it's probably, I don't know what it's like for you, Gavagai, but where I live, like, I think a lot of people probably do to some extent believe in ghosts, but like I feel like out in LA you probably get more of this kind of like, not that ghosts are that crazy, but more of the non-Christian supernatural stuff than I do.
Oh yeah.
Because for me it's like,
it's LA.
It's not like all over the place, but I mean I think more people are concerned about the Christian supernatural stuff than they are about ghosts or aliens or anything like that. But reptilians.
Yeah, you guys got more in the Midwest. Is it more alien stuff?
No.
I
don't run into that anyways. Well, I'm kind of in the South, so a lot of. But I think there are there are little snippets of things. If someone that I it was the first time I've encountered this person, but she's a very devout believer. I think I just made her acquaintance this last week, and she was wearing Christian jewelry and made a reference to letting him, pointing to the ceiling, make decisions for her. And so I think there's this Christian God belief, but then she also made a reference to her astrological sign being Libra or something like that, and I was like, what? So
you light herself on fire?
So yeah, it's a mix of things, but I think that's not an uncommon one. There's another guy that I know who is what is he? He's a Christian, I think, but he's made comments about how the apartment that he was renting was haunted and things, and so that there's this mix of things that goes on. And
yeah, I remember out in LA, my girlfriend and I were looking at an apartment, and it was one of those older buildings and stuff, and the lady that showed us the apartment, she was really nice, building was a little rundown and small, but because it's LA, and she said that she's an energy worker, and she cleansed the room after the last tenants moved out because there was a lot of like negative energy due to a lot of the arguing that was going on in there. And I was like, all right, because you don't want to be rude. I mean, you're just all right, cool story, bro, whatever. But at the same time, that L.A. is you get a lot of that, and especially with old buildings, because nothing trips out more people than old buildings, me included. I get creeped out in old buildings. And I was raised on like every bad horror movie ever made. So and my brother and my sister are 8 and 9 years older than me. So at certain points in my life there was a lot of torment and that kind of thing. And you know how much assholes older brothers can be, right? So I got like this mean flinch, like if a butterfly flew next to me, like I flinch, like I'm gonna get socked in the face or something. But know what? I get way creeped out. But then at some point you just go, okay, look, I'm in an old building, and there's probably not a ghost trying to throw a toaster at my head, or throw my coffee can off the table. More than likely, the building foundation is sinking, so the shelves aren't like level, and things slide off at times.
Yeah, for me with ghosts, I do think it's like I don't know, Gavagai, do you remember? I don't remember our parents really talking about ghosts or anything, but I definitely don't think we were taught to believe that they existed as Christians.
No, well, one of the things that our mom always told me was that the Bible says that man is only to live once, and then you go to either heaven or hell. So that you don't. But she always said, well, when the quote unquote apparitions or whatever it is that people are perceiving is probably demons.
Yeah, I do. I recall that being said, but I do think it's confusing why so many Christians seem to believe in ghosts, because it does seem like that doesn't really fit into the mythology of Christianity, like, because you got heaven and hell or purgatory, if you're Catholic, but in all of those cases they don't involve people floating around as spirits here on Earth. So I don't know how. I feel like that's just an old European thing that just, even when Christianity kind of took over Europe, that's still stuck around and people continued to believe despite the fact that they were Christians.
Oh, other cultures too. I mean, I think there are African cultures, and I don't know, maybe, China, they believe their ancestors watch out for them and things too, right? So it's interesting though, like in Japan they have these kami spirits, Kami, that are but they're supposed to inhabit things in nature and whatever, and it's a different mentality. So but I think similar phenomena like coffee cans being moved or whatever might elicit or they might attribute it to kami spirits, whatever that is, where people in the West might attribute it to ghosts or demons or whatever, and whatever you are. Oh, and then I learned a few months back that Muslims have a belief in, they have angels and demons, but then they also have these, what are they called? Shoot.
I'm trying to think of it too. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like they're like goblins basically. and so they'll say, well, this is angels, this is demons, and then there's these goblin guys.
Like little mischievous gremlin type things?
Well, yeah,
but they can be, but they're also sometimes. I had it for a second, but like also like the kind of like the genie in the bottle.
Yeah.
Kind of fits into that subcategory too. So they're not necessarily always. Is it Genji?
No.
No, that's not it. But something kind of in that vein. But yeah, so they're not necessarily always malevolent, but they can be. They're kind of mischievous often. But But yeah.
Well,
Well,
yeah, and it's funny. It's funny because you know mention that extra thing, whatever these guys are, to a Christian, and they're like, oh, you know, that's just silly. But jinn is what they're
Jinn, that's what
called.
it is. Yeah, Jinn.
Yeah, and so, but you know, you say, well, okay, so angels are real, demons are real, but these things are not, and you know that how? You know, eh, I
it
don't
was
know.
revealed to them in a way which they.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's how it's funny. Gosh, what was I listening to? Oh, I was listening to an old clip of Howard Stern, and he was going over. He had this bit on Kirk Cameron, where he was just going off on Kirk Cameron. This is back when Kirk Cameron was just like reaching his new fame with Ray Comfort. So it was a few years ago, and he goes, and then he got into like John Edwards and stuff, and he's like, and about how these people don't believe in the same stuff. He's like, no, don't believe that person's bullshit. Just believe my bullshit. You know, like that person's bullshit is ridiculous. No, but you know, go ahead and send me money. It's cool. You know, like like that kind of thing. That's just silly, Jin. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. You know, what bothers me too is not that people believe in this stuff per se. It's how they look at you incredulously if you don't believe in this, or at least, you know, in their eyes, are open to the idea of whatever it is they believe in. Like, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, I had this I don't say run-in, but I had this conversation with this chick, and you know, I'll preface it by saying that she was at least a little bit intoxicated.
Okay.
But I won't say, but not enough to where she couldn't, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like she couldn't formulate thoughts or anything, or where she was like rambling on. But anyway, so she was trying to convince me that there's this otherworldly energy that exists, right? And her position was, and if you want, you can play count the logical fallacy, but her position was, this energy exists because science cannot prove the non-existence of abstract concepts like morality. And I'm like, and like like if I had like a non sequitur meter, it'd be like ding ding, you know.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There was no real like definition for anything, you know, and I couldn't even get really into what I felt were flaws in her reasoning per se.
Yeah, it's so hard. Where do you start with?
Where do you start, right? Like I was driving like a week ago, and I went over that conversation in my head, and it was really fast, but I remember counting at least 3 logical fallacies in like those 3 sentences.
One per sentence.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was like,
you have more logical fallacies in that sentence than you have words.
It was like, yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways.
That shouldn't be possible.
You know, and I was thinking it was like there was obviously a non sequitur. There's an argument from ignorance, right?
Yeah.
And I forgot what the third one was. I was going through it in my head. I was like, damn it, I wish I could just went off, but it was at a point where she was like starting to speak louder and louder, and so it was like, well, I'm not going to get a word in edgewise, so, you know, cool story, bro, and then you just go on your way. But
yeah.
But that's the thing.
It's funny when you're in conversations like that and the other person's volume starts to like increase, or in comment threads their spelling gets really, really bad. It's like, okay, I must have struck a nerve.
Yeah, they start typing feverishly and they're just like,
spell check's gone awry.
I don't understand the whole mentality where it's like, you know, I don't get it. Like, to me, initially, at least in my head, I was like, wow, she doesn't understand what science is. You know what I mean? I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just like that there's probably a misconception there, you know, at least a little bit. And she definitely doesn't understand the scientific method, and she definitely doesn't understand you know, I would say the basics of argumentation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the thing in our society where we're surrounded by technology and all these things is people don't need to. They don't need to understand these things to live their lives. And so they can just formulate their own theories, their hypothesis in their own head, and they don't need to check it against anything.
Right. And that was funny. Her boyfriend actually asked what type of energy. And I thought that I was going to go, ooh, good, because someone was going to ask for some clarification. When you say energy, what does that mean? Because it's a very specific term, right, in science, right? It means something. And the response he got was, well, it's just this energy that's everywhere. And I'm like, and he goes, oh, okay. And I was like, what? I'm like, well, that's your boyfriend. He probably doesn't want to fucking get into it, but let's finish drinking our beers. But the idea that, like, I'm from the States. I'm like, I don't care. Like, it's funny because I'm curious about these things. Like, I want to know. Like I want to know. I want to know what goes on and kind of how Gabagai finds all these kooks like on the internet. Like, I don't go looking for kooks in real life, but if I find someone interested that has sort of an interesting viewpoint, like, I want to ask them questions. But sometimes asking them questions, they get mad. Like, they get offended, like I'm asking a question. And it's like, well,
because they want you just to agree with them. You're possibly poking holes in their whole theory. It's not cool, dude.
Yeah. I had an interesting conversation with a guy at the gym the other day. Because what was he talking about? I forget. There was something in the news. Oh, I know what it was. It was a death penalty that's going on in Arkansas. They're having the new governor is all gung ho about carrying out these executions that have been sitting. These prisoners have been sitting on death row for however long, and there's been a kind of a debacle related to the companies that previously had supplied the lethal injection chemicals. Anyways, all this stuff is going on, and these guys were talking about how it is that the prisoners could justify their objection to the death penalty when they carried out their heinous crimes or whatever. And okay, fine, whatever. But the conversation turned. Somebody brought up that story of Achan from the Old Testament, where the man's whole family were stoned to death because he stole something and whatever. And it was at that point that I kind of jumped into the conversation, and I said, well, so was that just? And because until that point I had just kind of been listening and been like, oh, well, whatever. But so then the guy pipes in and says, well, God said, so it's got to be just. And I said, well, how do you know a God said that? And then he got upset. He was like, well, I don't go there, and that's above my payroll or pay grade. And they're afraid to push and ask the questions. It's because they don't want to find out that the gaps are there, or that they might be mistaken. There's a fear of being wrong, I think, that kind of helps to solidify and perpetuate these beliefs.
But even when you're not, I find that even when I'm asking honest questions, like, I'm not probing, I'm not looking to like poke holes, like, I'm just curious about kind of where they're coming from and what their point of view is. I may not agree at the end of the day, but I kind of want to, like, see what their position's about, and maybe I'll learn something. You know what I'm saying? At least about them, but just the act of asking a question is bad. Like, it's frowned upon. It takes me at my word.
You're not trying to poke holes necessarily.
No.
But there are holes to be poked. So even though you're not trying to poke any holes, just the act of questioning may poke some holes, and that's bad. So lay off.
there are a lot of holes there for poking.
But But even if you ask to,
it is a very fragile piece of glass that they have presented in front of you, and you're trying to touch it, and you're about to knock it over, and they don't care for that, unless you're a ghost.
Unless you're a ghost. What's up, Fox? You made it.
Welcome.
Yeah, sorry if I'm late. I think there's a mix-up with the clocks going back in the UK, so apologies.
Oh, the clocks went back?
They did, yeah. We are now on winter time or whatever it is.
Wait. So does that mean ours goes back tonight at midnight? That's
No.
the state?
No, we go next week.
Oh, Europeans.
Mm.
Always ahead of the game. Hey, Fox, I got a question. I don't know if I asked you this before, but is your name a play on Fox in the Snow?
Yes, which is a Bell and Sebastian song.
Oh, okay. Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs. So I like the name Fox, I guess, because of the X-Files. So it's a bit of a play on words with the whole philosophy and knowledge and stuff. So yeah, it's Fox in the Snow, as you can see by the fact that there's a fox covered in snow. So it's,
Yeah. Well, your last picture was a fox in the snow. So I've always wanted to ask you that.
yeah, you've
Completely
cracked the code.
topic. Completely off topic.
You cracked the code. Well done.
Come on, and good night, everybody.
Now my job is done.
Now I'm not sure if you heard any of the first part of this, but we're sort of talking. I mean, we're dipping in and out of specifics, but does anybody want to give them a recap? That's probably better than I am. We talked about so many things. What we're currently on is the idea of asking questions about, I guess, the supernatural or supernatural causes or that kind of thing, and how sometimes it's, just even the act of asking a question, even if it's an earnest or to learn, is met with derision or frown. You get a frowny face because you either inadvertently or sometimes inadvertently, I guess, you sometimes poke holes, I guess, in their whatever they believe in, just by asking questions that they can't answer. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, usually it's accompanied by claims that we are begging the question of physicalism or materialism. But if anyone wants to know about supernatural causation, apparently Matt Bell would be happy to come in and demonstrate it. So I don't know if someone wants to send the link out to him. But
are you guys gonna start yelling at each other again?
Well, I mean, apparently Matt has put quite politely he'd be more than happy to present and defend supernatural causation. So if you are struggling with the concept or you're not quite sure about it, I'm sure it'd be quite helpful. He's not an idiot, so he might be able to present something that could clear a few things up. So I mean, I don't know if the link's out yet or if
it is out.
Then Matt's more than welcome to come in and educate us on supernatural causation
Can
as
he
he
speak
sees it.
faster than he normally does?
Well, yeah, you never know which Matt Bell's going to turn up. So it's yeah. So it's a topic that I kind of I struggle with, and I think it's one of the reasons why I am an atheist, I guess, is because I don't find anything substantive about it. So and the fact that it obviously plays a very important role in tying God to the universe, or this potential God that might exist. So I've never really understood much of the theistic belief in supernatural causation, or even what the supernatural is. I guess can it can vary so much and mean so much to different people. For some people, it's just a placeholder for that which we don't quite understand. For other people, it's something massively, vastly different, some different ontology out there in reality that isn't connected to the universe, except perhaps through these bizarre sort of pseudo-physical, supernatural connective points, like the creation of the universe or something like that. So it's all very, very vague and difficult to kind of get your head around. So,
and there are some theists who would even go so far as to say that is the real reality, and that what we perceive on a day-to-day basis is
yeah,
is a
definitely,
facade. I mean, that Jungle Jargon was essentially making that argument when he was talking with Skylar Fiction the other day.
I gotta say, as a side note, that guy's a fucking retard.
Yeah, I've not watched that yet.
He's fucking stupid. I mean, I know we don't normally go straight to insults, but I'm watching this, and I made the comment. I'm like, do you guys understand? He's like a mentally ill person, right? Like, you guys know this, right? Like he's the guy on your block that doesn't take care of his lawn and has all the drapes closed all the time. You know what I mean?
Hey, now.
Oh, not I. But I mean, you're talking to a crazy person, and then Skylar's like getting frustrated, which he generally doesn't do. He's generally very good about these things.
Yeah.
And he even goes like, "Dude, you're a scumbag." He said all the guy's name.
Yeah, that was very uncharacteristic of Skylar, but it was at the same time rather enjoyable to see.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is I think for someone like Skylar, and it's looked upon as being commendable, to have that sort of patience and try to get to But at the end of the day, in his head, if he was being honest, right? If he was being honest, he would have sounded exactly like I did just now, like maybe 10 minutes into the conversation. He would talk to the guy and just be like, "Dude, you're too dumb. You're retarded." And I think even someone like I'm not sure if it's Dragnaut or Wolf King. I sometimes get them mixed up when I'm not paying attention. And that's not because black people sound alike. I'm just saying
racism.
I know. It's not saying that. I'm saying because Dragnaut changed his picture recently, and I didn't know if it was anyway. And so I think there was I think it was Dragnaut, but there was a hangout, and he was explaining something to somebody, and then he explained it to him again, and then the guy just wasn't getting it, or wasn't trying to get it, or was being very jungle jargony, and Dragnaut just goes, "You're fucking stupid. You're too fucking stupid to get it." And I was like, "Yeah," and it was like he was done. And I don't know. I think there's some sort of that sort of outburst is generally not productive, but it certainly is honest.
Yeah.
To back up back into the supernatural, something you were talking about earlier, Heathen, reminded me, because for me, when I came out of being religious, I was fairly young. I was like 17 when I lost my belief in God, but I wasn't sure about what I thought about other supernatural things. Like, I wasn't sure if I believed in ghosts or not, and it took me a number of years before I kind of said, "No, I don't really believe in any of this." But like for a while, like I watched Ghost Hunters when that first came out, in the early 2000s or whatever, and I wasn't sure what to make of it, because they seemed earnest and honest, and like they were really trying to figure stuff out. And sometimes they would be like, "No, this place isn't haunted. This is just creaky floors or drafty whatever." So like at first I found that kind of compelling. And in I think it's the first season of Ghost Hunters, like the season finale, they go into like this lighthouse or something, and they have this camera up in their attic or whatever, somewhere up high, and somebody was sitting up there, and then they got up and left, but the camera's still rolling, and like I don't know, like 10-15 minutes after the person leaves, all of a sudden the chair moves slightly. And that was extremely compelling to me at the time, and I thought, oh wow, that, I don't know, I don't have an explanation, other than there's some sort of ghost or something going on here. And I still honestly don't know what was going on in that specific instance. I feel currently like it's more likely that somebody was doing a hoax, but I realized after, years after watching that, like, it's only in the context of a show about ghosts that I would even think that it was a ghost that did that. If I was watching a television show that was living chairs and they showed that exact same footage, I would assume that footage was, oh, that chair is alive. It's all this context that we put these things into that make us think that ghosts get the blame or credit, however you want to look at it, for so much of these kind of like random things that happen just because of the context. And again, like after I got away from ghost hunters and believing in ghosts at all, like looking back on some of the stuff that they do or they assume about ghosts, it just seems ridiculous. Like, why do they always have to film things in pitch black? What is it about the pitch black that makes ghosts come out? Why wouldn't ghosts also do the things they do in broad daylight? And it's just like, it seems much more likely that we feel fear and we are more susceptible to being afraid of things when our eyesight, which is our most used and useful sense, is at its weakest. And so we, all of a sudden, there's a little breeze or something, a noise, and our fear meter kicks up into another notch, and so we have this completely different interpretation of something in the pitch black than we would, if it was broad daylight. So,
yeah.
and you have other things too, like that. Even when I was watching Ghost Hunters, I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like they're cold. Like they're always looking. They got their little, whatever thermometers or whatever, and they're looking for like cold spots. But why would anybody think that has anything to do with a ghost, other than other people say it's related to a ghost? There's a bunch of things like that where there's these weird things that they've tried to connect to ghosts, and then other people glom onto that. But there's no correlation to a quote-unquote cold spot and a ghost that I'm aware of.
Well, Freon is made of ghosts. Am I wrong? Sometimes it leaks out of your refrigerator or your car, and you have to get it charged up with more ghost.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the ghost shows and stuff. That's a good point. It's like it's always at night. Like it's always like from midnight to like 4 in that they're there doing stuff. And it's like, yeah, why wouldn't a ghost come out at like noon and be like, hey man, I'm here for the Google Hangout or whatever, like.
And it especially becomes problematic trying to believe in ghosts when you're an atheist, I think, or a skeptic in particular, because why would humans be special in having ghosts? Like, why wouldn't there be ghost dinosaurs and ghost giraffes and ghost everything else that exists? But only humans get to have ghosts for some reason. I mean, if you come from the perspective of, well, there's a God and he made us in his image and we have souls, then I can understand why you would think only humans have ghosts. But when you leave that assumption, it kind of becomes ridiculous to think that only humans would have ghosts.
I think the reason behind the darkness thing is because they can't pick up in all the ghost shows. There's one thing that they have in common is the ghost figure or the shadow movement.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't pick that up necessarily with the lights on. I mean, it would just look. I don't know if it'll. I think that's the reasoning is. In theory, you should be able to see like a humanoid shadowy figure in the daytime as well, like moving across the thing. But I guess it's easier and more easily obscurable if you use a night vision camera.
That's true.
And to me, it's always like the weirdest angles. There's never like the shadow's never close to the camera. It's always like across the room, down the hall, like around the like peeking around the corner. You know what I mean? Like it's never close to the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Or they never put a camera on both ends of the hallway. You know what I mean? So that way.
Well, the ghosts know where the cameras are. That's why they're always at the farthest point away, because they don't want to be captured.
They want to be captured a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Not too much, though.
Not too much. Can't let the cat out of the bag completely.
It's kind of like the in Toy Story, the toys, there's a certain protocol that they have to operate by, and they can get away with certain things, but if they go too far, then they've broken the rules of the...
It's like Monsters, Inc.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There's like a union. There's like a ghost union somewhere. All right, Jimmy, you get the lighthouse this time. And, oh, damn it. Like, I went to... you guys are familiar with the Queen Mary? The cruise ship, the retired cruise ship?
Refresh our memory.
It's a big retired cruise ship that is next to the, out here in LA, in the Long Beach area. There's the Spruce Goose and the Queen Mary. And one was... gosh, who was that from? I don't know if it was a Howard Hughes thing, but anyway, for the Spruce Goose. But the Queen Mary is a big cruise ship, and it's retired, and it's said to be haunted, and they have, like, the Halloween, party there, and where there's, like, monsters and stuff, kind of like you would see at, like, Knott's Berry Farm or an amusement park.
Sure.
And when I was younger, we went ghost hunting down there, and we snuck through, like, past, where you're supposed to go, and we went into the belly of this huge ship. And they actually had filmed some movies down there, but, it was pitch black, like, black to where you couldn't even see literally your hand in front of your face. And so we had the little meter that had, like, that did, like, the little electrical pulse thing or whatever.
Yeah.
We're yeah.
The EMF or something?
Yeah. And so we're walking around doing that and stuff, and, like, there was, like, zero. We found, like, zero things. And the only scary part was we got lost. And we found some stairs, because it's a maze. The ship's huge, and it's not like it's built, linearly in a sense. There's steps everywhere and stuff. So we found our way up, and we got totally creeped out because we heard some steps and some noises. And so we hid behind these boxes, and then we realized, like, we were back in the employee area where all the monsters were, like, hanging out having lunch and shit. And then security saw us, and then they fucking chased us, and we were running around the boat with security chasing us, like a bad episode of Cops, like they were, like, full on sprinting after us. But we had I didn't find anything. The people I was with didn't find anything. But apparently there were two guys that got splintered off, and, like, they were in, like, the boiler room or whatever, and they were like, everything was cool, and then at the end of the walkway, a T, it branches off into a T, like a left or right, and they could have sworn they saw someone's leg, like from the knee down, like their foot and stuff, and they saw it and they booked it and they ran. And in my head, I'm like, well, you've been in complete darkness except for like a little flashlight and your little EMT thing. And especially down there where there's like pipes and all sorts of valves, pipes,
stuff all over the place.
Yeah, it's really easy to misinterpret things, but that's one of those things where I think about it, I'm like, well, they probably saw what they wanted to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, I think. It's like you said, like they've got their flashlights, and their flashlights are creating shadows as they're moving them around, and it's just like our ability to, like you put two dots next to each other and a little semicircle underneath it, and you've created a face. And like we're really good at creating patterns and seeing things and interpreting things in specific ways, especially related to human faces and just the human silhouette. We're really good at making out shapes even when they're not there.
Yeah, we do it with clouds all the time.
Yeah.
There's actually a literal game you play when you were a kid with the clouds, and
if you did it at night, it would be really scary.
Hey, Gabby, you said you had a video or something about magic orbs or light orbs or something?
Yeah. So, and this is just one example of kind of goofy stuff that I've found online. Let me.
I got into a real big argument with some lady who she posted like 6 videos, and it just said proof that angels exist or something, and it's just like.
Yeah, I may have seen that same one. I don't know, but
you find all the kooks, man.
Yeah, this is one. I don't even know if I've seen this one before, but they've just got. Can you white screen me here, or white box me?
What the fuck does that mean?
click on my icon below my screen. That'll share my screen with the Hangout.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah. So, anyways, and it just there was apparently this event, and people were gathered there to meditate. But you can see, you know, the point was, okay, now all of these orbs have shown up. But you can see, let me back it up just a smidge. Like, it's raining. So you can see drops on the lens, and they've taken photos, but it's just rain. That's all it is. But they want to try and make it out to be this
Well,
magic
hang on a
stuff
second.
going
One of them really looks like Casper, the friendly ghost.
Yeah, when you zoom in close enough, right? I mean,
That's proof for me. I'm convinced.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's funny when you go to the beach. You know, sitting out on the beach and stuff, it's fun. But when you go at night, if you take your camera, especially like your cell phone camera, and even when you don't feel any mist or any spray or anything like that, and you take a photo, there's a lot of moisture in that air, and you will nearly always get like a bajillion like little tiny minuscule, you know, moisture drops. But I've been in situations at night where I can't even see them until I take the picture.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to get that sort of stuff on your camera.
Well, and then that video with the lady that was saying, "Oh, this is proof of angels" or whatever. The photo, if it's the same one that I saw, the photo was taken in this room that they had done recent construction in. So
Yeah.
you know, there was dust in the air most likely, and she was like, "Well, we took the photo and we couldn't see these orbs when, you know, before we took the photo, and then, you know, after the photo gets processed, of course, because of the flash, you get these little reflecting objects in there." She was like, "Oh, that's angels." Okay, why is that angels?
Yeah, if you show it to her, it's angels. If you show it to somebody else, it's ghosts.
Exactly. Yeah. So this group that's meditating, they probably did not interpret these as angels. They just call them energy orbs and think about it as beautiful representations of planetary energy becoming manifest in response to the ever-growing level of consciousness present at this time.
Yeah. And I think that lady ended up blocking me, or I blocked her, because she was just so insane. Like, she was, I mean, yeah. She was just as insane as Jungle Jargon, but like less well spoken. Like I don't even know how that's possible, but so
yeah, I think that's her.
I'm trying to find that video. God.
Yeah.
So anywho, it's.
Yeah, it was funny, this comment from a person on this video that I just showed a snippet of. It says, I just started meditation, and when mixing it with orb photography, you get some amazing pictures. After a while, you don't even need a camera to see them or a source of light. So you apparently just your imagination takes over.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Everything is so poorly defined, and you know, you got. Where do you begin? I mean,
Christian Anarchist has joined us.
Yes.
Hey, what's up?
Hey.
We have not met. Are you? I gotta ask. Are you Asian? Or are you one of those white dudes that like is obsessed with anime? Just judging by your picture.
Yeah, I'm one of those white crackers that's obsessed with anime.
Just had to ask.
Well, fuck.
So Christian Anarchist has kindly agreed to fill in for Max and give us an explanation from a theistic perspective of the supernatural and the supernatural causation and how he sees it working. So,
courtesy of Vinton Jones.
Yes. So if you want to give it a whirl, that'd be awesome.
Well, the thing with this, I never have really heard the term supernatural causation, so to speak honestly, I don't exactly know what it means, but if it is what I think it means, that things can be caused by supernatural like it's the cause and effect thing, and the result is from being caused by something that's supernatural. I believe that such a thing can exist. I personally don't think I can explain it rationally, but from what I hear people say that in the book Miracles by C.S. Lewis, he manages to explain it, how it can be explained in a rational thing that does not break the realms of reality and science. So, but as far as the topic itself, I think that miracles or supernatural causation itself can exist, and there are ways we can look at it from a certain perspective that can be considered rational.
And what way is that?
What way is that?
You said there are ways we can look at it.
Right. I mean, one of the big things that the Christians, well, not all of them, but some, will cling to is the Big Bang, for example. The concept that there was a beginning, which wasn't the view at first until it later got discovered, and I forget who it was. I think it was Edward Hubble or whatnot. I keep forgetting who came with the whole concept of the Big Bang. But with that being in mind, there was a beginning, which means there was nothing first, and then there was all of a sudden a beginning. So there had to have been something that caused that. Now, there's of course different perspectives, with the naturalist perspective and then the theistic, supernatural perspective. And depending on what each of these things have said, we just have to look at what they can be considered rationally. And I think concerning things like Big Bang, it's not really that much irrational to say that this could be a result of a supernatural form of causation. I remember the Christian astronomer Hugh Ross stated that when he was explaining Big Bang cosmology at his in China, which a majority of them are secular, and people that were secular, they said that even though they didn't believe in God, they had to admit that with the Big Bang and what we see in the universe, it does seem like some kind of a design or causation of some sort came into place that appears supernatural to them. So I think there is ways that we can look at it and, you know, make some conclusion that it's supernaturally caused, but sometimes some people don't always see it that way.
Like, there's a bit of a misconception, to my understanding, of the Big Bang, and someone maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just watched this not too long ago on television, and it's not there's this misconception. If you remember the diagram for the Big Bang, it always looks like kind of a tube, you know, like starting from a point, and that's not what physicists are saying. It's sort of like a bad representation of what the Big Bang model actually is. Sort of like that, the monkey turning into a caveman into a human is not how evolution works.
Right.
But it's not that everything came into existence at everything at one point. It's the dimension of time came into existence and matter not at one point. It does not mean that everything as we know it came into existence at one point. It's
right.
Things could have been eternal for that whole time, but time as we know it came into existence at that point.
Right.
Yeah, I think that something to bear in mind as well is I'm not someone who would actually go as far as to say that supernatural causation is irrational. I think it's logically possible, but it's one of a number of possibilities. So I would never go to it. I think the only way you could probably establish any connection between the Big Bang and supernatural causation is if you could say that all other avenues were in some way less plausible than the supernatural causation. So in that case, it would be an appeal to the best explanation, as if supernatural causation was the best explanation. But that's where I kind of have a big problem, because I don't see how something which otherwise hasn't been established or fleshed out or understood as a mechanism for how it can actually causally affect material things. If all we have is the appeal to logical possibility, how do we actually say, well, actually that option is better than other logically possible options? And I think for me, there isn't anything yet that I've heard from theists that, and William Lane Craig is someone who's done an awful lot of work to try and put his option as being somehow better than the other logically possible options out there, or close off other options as not being logically possible or coherent. So I think it's highly speculative, and we're talking about a highly speculative realm.
Right.
So I grant that it's not logically impossible, and therefore I wouldn't say it's irrational to posit the possibility of supernatural causation. But if you were going to say that supernatural causation is actual and concrete and happens and is a good explanation for things, that's where I would have an issue with certain theists who might put that forward. And
Right.
so, I mean, if you were happy to say, well, that's a leap of faith, or that's something that isn't something that you'll put too much emphasis on as an explanatory framework, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
So I think you've got to be careful when you say irrational, as if we're throwing it out as a possibility. I think that's where you kind of beg the question of metaphysical naturalism, which I would be cautious against doing.
Right. I mean, the only reason I bring it up is the idea of philosophy, and I gotta go in a couple minutes, but I will be back. I just gotta eat something real quick. But the book that I mentioned that C.S. Lewis read called Miracles, there's a quote that I kind of agree with concerning the idea of supernatural causation, or sometimes would be considered a miracle. And it goes along the lines like this: for this reason, the question whether miracles occur can never be answered simply by experience. Every event which might claim to be a miracle is, in the last resort, something presented to our senses, something that's seen, heard, touched, smelled, or tasted, and our senses are not infallible. If anything extraordinary seems to have happened, we can always say that we have been the victims of an illusion. If we hold a philosophy which excludes the supernatural, this is what we always shall say. What we learn from experience depends on the kind of philosophy we bring to experience. It is therefore useless to appeal to experience, therefore, before we have settled, as well as we can, the philosophical question. And that was
Sorry. No, thanks for that. I think that's interesting. That's why I would say we have to be careful about ruling out the possibility, because there is a methodological problem, isn't there, in that supernatural isn't something that we can seem to be able to confirm or establish, and we would always say that there are other naturalistic explanations for pretty much any phenomenon that you could imagine. So that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But for me, to go from the merely possible to or what some might derogatorily say as the imaginary, to the actual best explanation, that methodological flaw isn't mine. I don't have any necessity to appeal to supernatural explanations. That to me is a stumbling block that the believer in the supernatural would have to breach. I don't think, as a methodological naturalist, I don't think I have any need to. I mean, it's not my lookout, if that makes sense. I mean, that's for the supernaturalist to come to some means of confirming supernatural explanations exist and how they happen, and also opting for one particular supernatural explanation out of, it's conceivable there are many supernatural beings or realms or things that could exist, and we haven't established which ones do. So it's one thing to establish which ones do, and then follow the link of each causal stage to look in and say, there we go, there's something going on there, there's some kind of connection. So for me, we're talking about a big set of possibilities that we can't quite connect to actual concrete experiences in the real world, and that's what we're trying to explain. And I don't discount the possibilities, and if we could somehow exhaust all of the possibilities, then that might be interesting, although I still would have this problem of how it is an explanation to posit something which, for some theists, not all theists, but some theists, it is a radically different kind of ontology at work. So it seems like you've got this ontological kind of cut and shut case. It's one end of the car is immaterial and one end of the car is material, and somehow it drives along. I don't kind of get that. I mean, I know it's partly a silly analogy, but if you know what I mean, I don't know how things connect up. To me, causality is about connectiveness. It's about state A causing state B to change in some way, and I want to know how that's done. I don't want it to. I mean, it's always possible that state A is attempting to change state B, but state B just spontaneously changes of its own accord. I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, how do we eliminate that as a possibility and say actually no, there is some connection from state A to state B, unless we can look in on that kind of connective relationship, and I don't see anything there. So I think it's I think it's honest what you say. I think that is a bit of a problem for people who believe in the supernatural, and I think you are correct to say that if someone comes to you and says, well, haha, that just shows that the supernatural is impossible. No, I still think it's possible to have some kind of belief in it or some appeal to it on a personal level. I have no problem with that. But I think if you're putting it forward as serious explanations for how reality works, I struggle to see how that actually is a good explanation in any sense of how we usually see good explanations in the rest of science. And he's gone. Sorry, Christianicus hasn't rage quit or anything like that. He might be coming back. So sorry, maybe I bored him off.
He had said he was going to get something to eat.
Fair enough. Hopefully he'll come back.
Is it weird? Is it weird that I get at least somewhat irritated at the idea that I have to be accepting of every fucking kookajou story that comes out just to be. You know what I mean? Like, just so I don't violate any sort of philosophical, you know what I'm saying? Like,
you're entitled to your own epistemology, your own methodology of what accounts for a good explanation, and that's fine. I just think it's slightly churlish to rule out, in a metaphysical sense, any kind of anything really. I think it should always be there in the possibility basket. But the problem is, how do you get anything from the possibility basket into the actual basket, rather than just appealing to it could be the case that it should go in the actual basket.
It takes a lot for someone to even get. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it takes a lot for someone to get me to put something in the possibility basket, because it just leaves the door open for everything. You know what I mean? Like, dragons and fairies and magic pumpkins and everything got to go in the possibility basket because
it depends. It depends on the way that you set up your possibility basket. Because I mean, when we're talking about logically possible basket, I mean anything that's logically coherent essentially can go in the logically possible basket. That's fine. But if you're talking about scientifically or nomologically possible, as in works with the rules of physics as we understand it, then yeah, that's a much more restrictive basket. Then these things can't really go in there. But what the theist would do in most cases would be to say, well, this should actually be, that basket's far too restrictive as a possible exhaustive account of reality. We should have a bigger basket, and I grant them that.
Well, I don't discount things just to discount them. I mean, it's just again, living in Los Angeles, I hear a whole lot of kooky shit, and so you almost build up a sort of force field to it in a way. I mean, you think about it for all of 3 seconds, and then you're just like, okay, whatever. But for someone to even get into the possibility basket, I would have to admit it would take a little bit of work for me, because I'm just that skeptical.
Yeah, well, I think you're thinking of your quote-unquote possibility basket as something that you would necessarily have to take very seriously. Like, I can acknowledge that there are possibilities, but they are so unlikely that I can essentially disregard them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and
like, it is possible that at some point there were dragons, but I find it so unlikely that I don't take it seriously. But I still acknowledge that it is technically possible that at some point there were dragons.
What about magic pumpkins?
Sure.
Why not? Sure. Oh, man. What's up, Floyd? What's up, Matt? How's it going?
Hey, guys. I just got on. I didn't hear the beginning of the show, so...
We're talking about supernatural stuffs and supernatural causations, that kind of thing, and If I recall correctly, Matt and Christian Anarchist jumped in to give a case for it, I think, on some level. Max was supposed to come in, but he couldn't make it. And it sort of started very simply with people in my personal life attributing things like, coffee can falling off the shelf to ghosts, finding patterns in things, like the human brain finding patterns and trying to find explanations when, that get attributed to the supernatural when probably there was a simpler explanation. What am I missing, guys?
You're missing the fact that a simpler explanation does not equal the best explanation. That's the first fact you're missing.
Okay. But what else was... I'm trying to give a recap of the show. So, Gabby, Turtle, what else was I missing for the other two guys that just came in? We talked about lizard people.
Yeah. We gave a lot of different examples of different things that people attribute to, quote unquote supernatural, and then just talked about issues with actually kind of justification for making those claims that X, phenomena X is qualifies as supernatural.
I even have a problem with the term supernatural, as in it's so ill-defined half the time that, who knows what it even freaking means at certain points, and everyone has kind of their own different take on it. Just the whole concept of it. So Matt was supposed to come here and wow us with his wisdom and plead his case for a supernatural cause. So, Floyd, if you don't have anything, I'm sure Matt's going to take a little bit to go through his points.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes from our evolution to find intentional agents in things, and that's where beliefs in supernatural came from. Just slowly eroded over time with the success of science and naturalism. You can't necessarily rule out supernaturalism, but the question is what good reasons do we have to believe that such a realm exists?
What reason do we have to believe that over time theism, belief in the supernatural, has eroded? Atheism in America has a percentage of 5%. 5%.
The nuns are growing and growing.
Yeah, okay, so we're at 5%. Let's double that and give you 10%.
We're not talking about atheism. We're talking about the erosion of supernatural explanations, like the explanation of where the Earth came from in your Bible has been disproved.
90% of the population of America are supernaturalists. They believe in the supernatural.
Well, they claim that, but a lot of it's just cultural and upbringing.
Are you saying they don't? Are you saying that they are lying when they claim to have a belief?
Yes, I think a lot of them are actually. Yes.
All right. So can you demonstrate that atheists are not lying when they say they don't believe that God exists? Maybe they're lying also.
Well, no, they have less motivation to lie. In fact, they have more. They have more motivation to claim.
Why would I grant you that? Atheists have every reason to lie because they are ego-centered.
No, that's false. That's totally false.
Yeah, of course, but that's the point. Just as you can...
the theists are egocentric because they want to live in paradise. They just care about their salvation. They're worried about their souls.
Just as you can ad hominem theists by attributing to them that they are lying when they claim to have a belief,
I'm not saying what I think.
So I can ad hominem.
Well, that's fine, but that's what I think.
Attribute to them all sorts of intentions, false intentions, and guess what? There's no way we can evaluate whether or not your claim or my claim has any truth value.
All right. Well, we just have to evaluate our reasons then. I'd like to hear your good reasons without begging the question why supernaturalism is true.
That's not the subject of the hangout. The subject of the hangout, I believe, is defending supernatural causation. Did I get that wrong?
No, go ahead, defend it.
Is that the subject of the heading?
Yeah, it's fine. No, it's not. You're not wrong.
So if there's evidence, if there's a good line of evidence that suggests that something that is mental only, mind only, and cause the universe to come into existence, then that's an example of supernatural causation, and that's an example of supernatural causation, regardless of whether or not we can specifically give a mechanism for how that would occur. A mechanism is not required for something to be the best explanation for a given set of evidence.
How can it be an explanation if we don't know whether or not it exists?
No, we do. No, again, try and listen if you can. Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's say we have evidence that something that is a mental only being created the universe. That would come under the definition of supernatural. That would mean you have an example of supernatural causation. What you cannot explain is how that evidence thing did what it did. It still did what it did. You just cannot provide an explanation for the mechanism by which it did it. You have evidence.
What was the evidence for it?
Yeah, I think we better present that.
Well, again, there's about 52 lines of evidence for the existence of God that, despite the vain attempts of atheists to present objection to, long-winded as they are fruitless, pointless, and logically flawed.
No. What's your evidence that Yahweh created the earth? Let's hear it.
That's not my. I haven't made that claim.
Well, okay. What supernatural cause are you claiming?
I'm claiming that if you have evidence that a supernatural being created the universe, you have an example of supernatural cause.
Brilliant.
Give an example of something that was caused and supernatural.
The universe was caused to exist by a mind only.
Otherwise,
by us.
What's the evidence for that?
The evidence is the Callum cosmological argument, the ontological argument, the
argument does not have
No.
And just for anyone who wants to go along the rabbit hole of saying that arguments are not equal evidence, I would just point you to Ozymandias Ramesses. Ozymandias Ramesses is on record on the at least 2 occasions. In fact, he was on the Magic Sandwich show just last week, which I was on also. He came on specifically to address that question.
No one said that. No one said that, Matt.
Run Gava guy was just started to say that just before he was interrupted.
Well, in that case, I would disagree with Gava guy. I think you are.
That's why I referred him to someone
The cosmological argument does not show that a mind created the universe. You need to offer a better argument for that.
You
can say the universe was caused. We'll even grant that, but then you need to show that it was a supernatural mind.
If you ever familiarize yourself with these arguments,
yes, I am quite familiar with them. Why don't you offer the reasons?
So tell me this: what kind of cause does the Callum cosmological?
No. You need to answer these questions.
No. You just made an assertion.
You said you had reasons for
supernatural causes.
You're shifting the burden. Let's hear it.
Is there a moderator in the hangout?
We're all yelling over each other. So
okay, so can we stop that and have a kind of ordered discussion then?
Right, but you have to.
Can we do that?
Hello. I understand you're in a room with 5 people, and I understand Floyd and Fox you had some word with in the past. But
so can you have an ordered?
Can you let him finish?
Shh.
Answer the question. Are you capable of moderating the hangout?
Muchacho. Calmate.
Yeah. Are you capable of moderating a hangout?
Sit back in the chair in your older folks' home and relax for a second.
Then moderate the hangout properly.
I'm trying to moderate you.
No, moderate the hangout. I'm not
You're the disruptive influence in the hangout, Matt. When you're talking over the moderator, that is disrupting the hangout.
He's an asshole, so I don't mind talking over him.
How am I an asshole? What did I do?
Look at the picture you have on. Look at the stupid picture you have on your bloody well. Picture you have.
Ad hominem.
Moderate the hangout or disappear.
What?
It's his hangout, Matt.
I don't give a fuck who the hangout is. He moderates
You just say you don't give a fuck. Matt, you appeal.
Is he capable of doing that or is he not?
Is it funny that we just invited Matt on to laugh at him?
Matt,
do you want to have a discussion or do you not?
Matt,
do you want to have a discussion?
Matt,
Do you
Shut
want
the
to
fuck
have
up.
a discussion? No,
Oh
I
my
won't
God.
shut the fuck up. I want an answer to my question.
Matt,
Do you want to have a discussion?
it seems that you're upset.
No, I'm not upset. I'm kind of annoyed that your inability to moderate the hangout.
You're kind of annoying, is what you are.
Yeah, but I don't
Well,
mind.
if you want to leave, go ahead. I don't give a fuck if you leave.
No, of
The
course you don't. Of course
The
you
thing
don't.
is, Matt,
I don't care if you leave.
What you would rather have is 5 atheists sitting in a hangout, shoring up each other's faith. No theistic representation.
We just
of
had a
belief.
theist in
No
here.
theistic.
I know.
We had a nice discussion with a theist. He left
We
with
asked-
something to eat, and then you
Okay.
came in, and you're a bully.
Yeah, no. What you have is you have a theist who is
Matt, come
incapable
on.
of competently defending the case.
Yeah,
Well,
and would
you've
like
not
him to leave
completely
right now.
defended. You've not
That's
completely.
because I'm trying to get to off first space where we can have a
We're trying to
moderated
get you to
discussion.
defend the case. You came
Yeah.
in with an assertion, and you
Again.
didn't offer. You're shifting the burden.
When are we going to have some moderation in the hangout to regulate the
Probably
discussion?
after you leave because you suck balls.
No, I'm quite happy to follow.
Yay!
I'm sorry, I had to do it.
Yeah, okay, Matt. Yeah, okay. Let's hear your evidence. Let's hear the cause. You said there was a cause. Let's hear it. Oh well, tell me. I want you to tell me about the Kalam. What? No, I don't need to tell you anything, buddy.
This is what I don't understand about Matt. But okay, he gets pushed into a corner where he now has to start actually laying down some evidence. Not only it is evidence, it's fine, it's evidence, but evidence that we find convincing. Okay, that's the problem. Matt Bell never does that, and then he starts attacking the moderator. He appeals to the moderator and then attacks the moderator. Who does that? Who says why aren't you moderating? Why aren't you moderating? When he's the one who is disrupting the moderator from doing the moderation. Essentially, he did that. That's typical Matt Bell, right? Matt Bell always does this. He pushes, he kicks up a fuss. Whenever I've been in a hangout with him, he's always done this, and then he talks over people, and then he gets kicked. And I think he wants to get kicked. I don't think he has any evidence which is ever going to convince any of us. And that's not all because we're all atheists and we don't understand his evidence, or we don't want to believe his evidence, which is what he will tell himself. It's because this evidence isn't convincing, because we're talking about supernatural causation, and he's making an appeal to an argument which doesn't work in establishing that supernatural causation is the only game in town. That's what William Lane Craig's entire approach is to do. He takes other possibilities and says, none of these work. The only one that works is this efficient cause without any material cause somehow affecting material reality. Well, guess what? That's not a good explanation either, Matt. And William Lane Craig doesn't actually succeed in stopping the other possibilities in their track. So try again, okay? And then don't reference the ontological argument as if the ontological argument is an argument for supernatural causation, because the ontological argument is a load of crap. And he just rattles these off. He just comes in here with his bag of tricks and then gets all worked up, talks over people, and ends up getting kicked out. And I was calm. I tried to sit back. I let him bloviate. I let him do his usual ad homs, his usual attacks on the moderator, calling you an asshole. When you were being for a while, you were being perfectly nice to him and perfectly respectful. And we offered the floor to him. We let him speak, and he has this just. He does. I think it's all deliberate. I'm sorry. It's a rerun of what he did last time he came on here. He's on for 10 minutes, if that, and then he gets kicked.
Did he make 10 minutes this time?
I don't know. We can watch back
I
up.
think.
It's kind of funny because I actually hadn't really said anything. I said I was like guys for a little bit, and then I hadn't actually really said anything to him when he called me an asshole. I was like, what did I do?
Well, you're an asshole.
Well, I already know that, but I mean,
He doesn't like your icon there.
Yeah.
But he does that.
Nobody likes it though, so.
Yeah, it is a little bit creepy. But the thing is,
I have to go on record as saying that Fox suggested that Matt be brought in here.
yes, because actually, I mean, if you're going to talk about someone within our community who thinks he's got good arguments, other than say Maximus, who would have presented, I'm sure, a far better fist of it, who we can you can come to disagreement with, but Matt not only thinks he has a good case for supernatural causation, he derides anyone who rejects it. And that's the problem. We're all entitled to not be convinced. All he can do is say, well, I've prevented you really good rational arguments that any rational-minded person would accept. The fact that you're not accepting it shows A, you can't understand it, or B, you don't want to. Now, had he actually laid out his arguments, and we were all saying that, then he might have a case. But he just believes that, and so he just thinks he can come in here and berate us all for not understanding and not being as smart as him, and not for all swallowing the William Lane Craig Kool-Aid, which is what he's done. But the problem is, when you look at Craig's argument, the reason why the Kalam, for instance, I don't accept the Kalam, is because it's built on certain philosophical ideas and intuitions which I don't actually hold. I think when you get into these philosophical arguments, there isn't any settled fact of the matter. There are only our intuitions which lead us to accept one position over another. Now, that's been the case in philosophy since its inception, and that's always probably how it's going to be. So he can present his arguments and say, well, if you believe that, for instance, that the time follows the eighth area of time, or if you believe that in dualism and substance dualism of the possibility of a disembodied mind, if you think that's a coherent, sensible thing, if you believe that an actual infinity is impossible, and if you believe that it's not a good explanation to say that something just comes from nothing, then you would be forced to say that supernatural causation, which you've already omitted the possibility of supernatural minds out there causing things, is a good explanation. But if we reject all of those positions, and there are very good philosophical reasons not to, and there's a debate to be had around them, then where are we left then? Well, we're not going to accept the Kalam as a good piece of evidence, are we? So that's what Matt doesn't seem to get. Yes, some people fall into the trap of saying, well, arguments are not evidence. They can be. Okay, a good argument could be evidence if someone presents within the argument what we would consider to be facts of the matter, reflections of how reality is, if we are being honest and coherent with our own epistemic preferences. Yes, we would say that argument contains facts. I can't refute the form of the argument, and I can't refute its content. Therefore, I do accept that argument as evidence for what you're claiming. But we're nowhere near that, and Matt Bell knows we're nowhere near that. And instead of realizing he's coming to a community with people with different philosophical inclinations and intuitions, instead of accepting that and saying, well, here's me building on these arguments, and if you want to know why I believe in dualism, well, let me present you this argument, okay? Or you want to know why I adhere to the A theory of time? Well, here, let me present these arguments. And that's the level of debate that we could be getting at, and we could be trading on our intuitions, seeing if there is a shared ground on which we can actually say who's more right than not. But if our positions are just completely different, if we're coming at this from completely different angles, then there isn't ever going to be a case where we can say one way or the other who's right and who's wrong. We can just say, well, you're rationally coherent with the set of philosophical beliefs that you have, and I am with mine. And so unless we can go out into the world and find a piece of evidence which can either discredit one set of beliefs or positions over the other, then we're just going to have to leave it there and shake hands and get on with our life. But Matt can't do that. Matt insists on deriding and undermining and insulting other people's positions and philosophical inclinations and intuitions, and saying that they're wrong because William Lane Craig got an argument for why they're wrong, rather than saying, well, there's a debate to be had about that. He instead of taking the more conservative position and saying that this is an account that I adhere to, he says, no, this is an account that everybody should adhere to, and that's just it. And it's just so pathetic and childish. And I can only think he's doing it to convince himself rather than convince anyone else, because I've never heard him convince anybody. It's always the same shit.
Hey, Turtle, was that your first run-in with Matt?
That was my first. Yeah, in a hangout with him. I've seen some of his videos and whatever, but one thing real quick I wanted to bring up that Floyd was talking to him about, that I thought it was strange that he would even deny that, Matt Bell would deny that we're less supernatural than we were in the past. I mean, maybe the percentages aren't of like people who believe in anything supernatural are not like overwhelmingly smaller now, but each individual believes in less supernatural explanations than they used to. I mean, we used to believe that lightning was caused by Zeus, and that the Earth was pulled around, the sky, or I'm sorry, the sun and moon were pulled around the sky by chariots and things like that, where we now have much better explanations that are not supernatural.
Right. Yeah, that was my point. Yeah, we have more because of the success of science. We have natural explanations have replaced supernatural explanations, and as history moves on, as we figure things out more and more, it is when we figure it out, it's always a natural explanation. We don't have one example of when we figured something out that it was a supernatural explanation. Not one. Supernatural explanations always just end up being, we don't know how it happened, but some intentional agent must have done it. But we never figure out how he did it.
That was when he said, if I'm understanding him correctly, he said, I don't understand the mechanism by which he did, God did these things, but here are these arguments why I believe God did these things, right? Is that kind of...
I've been over that with Matt before, and he just...
Well, the problem is that he's describing this supernatural mind or non-physical mind, or... I mean, that's what I mean by the possibility basket, right? So no one is saying, I'm going to flat out, just dismiss everything out of hand. But when someone just says, like in this example, when someone says supernatural mind, my head goes to, oh, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so for someone just to go, well, it's a possibility, so you should consider it, I was like, well, no, fuck that noise.
It's something that Matt Bell does, which is right out of the handbook of William Lane Craig, is he retreats to the god of the generic god of the philosophers. We say, okay, Matt Bell, you're a Christian. You don't believe a generic God created the universe and the earth and so forth. You believe the Christian God created the heavens and the earth and created a flood and all that. Okay, those things can be falsifiable. So if we take the Bible literally and we examine, well, is there a firmament above us? What was the heavens and the earth created at the beginning? Beginning of what? Beginning of the creation of the universe? No, the earth wasn't created at the beginning. So I think we can rule out the Christian God here. Now, if you're gonna retreat to a God of philosophers, that's fine. But I think it's time to give up Christianity and move on from there. And then I'm going to ask you, now you have the God of philosophers. What are your reasons for believing that?
Yeah, wouldn't that just put him in that deist territory? I mean, it's almost like you jumped. It's funny, Floyd, because I noticed that you went right to him with that, where you were trying to get him on specifics, like right away.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the fluff has been done years and years and years. Let's just cut down to the matter. You just jump right straight to that. Do you believe? Do you have evidence for the Christian God or not? If you don't, okay, then join Schuyler Fiction and be a deist. But let's stop pussyfooting here. And the same thing with presuppositionalism. To deal with a presuppositionalist, all you need to do. This is very simple. All you need to do is ask them, do you start with unjustified assumptions in your worldview? If they're willing to admit that, okay, then boom, all their arguments against you are now gone. Arcane, for example, will not admit it. And I've been pointing out, well, he has admitted in the past, but I pointed out to him, and he simply won't bring it up and admit it now. But again, that's just two simple ways to put an end to their nonsense.
Oh, fuck arcane logos. I forgot. Sorry. I always mean to do that in the very beginning, and I always forget. But
Arcane and I have been going at it for the past 4 days on comments.
I tried to listen to his conversation with Negation of P, and it was just literally the worst conversation. It was worse than the Schuyler Jungle Jargon conversation. I actually, back in the day, I would have listened to anything that made Arcane look like an idiot, which isn't hard because I consider himself in that same category. But this was just bad. Like, he doesn't even try anymore. Like, he's literally, nope, you can be bringing to vet. I don't got to talk to you. Bye. And then was like, just, I don't know how long it was, maybe an hour of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Arcane's doing to me now. He's saying, Floyd, until you solve solipsism, I don't need to do anything.
Yeah, like, what is that?
Yeah, it's known as the coin toss strategy. Whoever wins the coin toss first wins. So, okay, so you're in a debate, you flip the coin, oh, I win. I won the coin toss. Okay, my opponent, you solve all the philosophical dilemmas that philosophers have been trying to solve, over the millennia, and if you don't do that, then I don't need to answer. I mean, that's what pretty much what it boils down to. Oh, I win.
Yeah, somebody posted, this is a long time ago when pre-sup was a thing, but someone posted it's called the first question, and whoever asked the first question, they sort of sit back on their laurels and not want to do anything else until, like you said, it's like, well...
Yeah, whoever wins a coin toss, whoever gets asked first wins.
Yeah, it's pretty shitty. And...
Can I just say something before I've got about 5 minutes to go? So Matt Bell is now posting on his Google Plus feed that we are A, censoring him, and B, we are cowards running away. So can I just say to anybody watching this? I mean, the likelihood is you know who Matt Bell is and you know what he's like, but just watch back this hangout and just see Matt Bell appealing to the moderator who started this hangout, who, by me asking the moderator, has vicariously invited him in to have a discussion today. He then insulted the moderator, called him an arsehole, talked over the moderator when the moderator tried to establish some sort of control, and was at that point the source of disruption. So I think by any rules of discourse, be it any academic or intellectual, or just plain old fucking being polite, and we all know Matt Bell likes to appeal to this idea of him being some kind of lofty academic type. You do not insult the moderator, you don't overtalk the moderator, you don't come in deliberately obfuscate and derail the conversation, and then go out and cry and bitch and moan, okay? So Matt Bell, if you are watching this, I'm sure you are, this is disgraceful behaviour, and that's why you're not in the hangout. It has nothing to do with your poor arguments. You're welcome to start up a thread and tell us all how we're terrible and wrong, and if I might even look at it if I get the time. But do not sit out there with your whiskey and your cat or whatever it is you're doing up in Glasgow, cold evening, come in here after we've invited you in to present your case, insult the moderator, talk over people, and just be a general arsehole, and think that you can then go off to say to other people that actually you're being censored. Because if you watch this back and if you listen to Christian Anarchist, he started to present his arguments. He was polite, he allowed us to respond, he took on board what we said, he left because he had to go get something to eat. He might come back in, I don't know.
Oh no, we censored him. We censored him too.
Well, there you go. That's an example of someone actually who is being listened to, who is being talked to respectfully and given their chance to talk, which is exactly what we would have given you if you weren't such a ridiculous individual. So, fuck you, Matt. Try harder. No one's censoring you, and I've got to go. So thanks for having me. And enjoy the rest of the
Kick that fox out of here.
Start censoring me. Censor.
I think.
For the record, I just want to say I think Heathen did a perfect job moderating, because Matt Bell was the only person that needed to be moderated and the only person who refused to be moderated. So it left him with no choice.
It's kind of weird, and I will, my patience only goes so far, but it was more. I mean, I found it kind of humorous because Matt's one of those guys that he's going to jump in a room, and I kind of know what's going to happen. I knew it. I knew sort of what was going to happen because of what happened last time, and I don't think he just. I mean, he's in his 50s or something, probably in his late 50s. He probably hasn't jumped up in maturity. If he hasn't matured by now, he's probably not gonna, be a mature guy when he jumps in this hangout. So I kind of knew that. When he started getting extra belligerent. I took shots at him because why not? And I can admit that. And most people would come on and go, taking shots at people isn't the right way to go about it. That was wrong on my part. And I was like, no, fuck that. He deserved all that shit to me. But anyway, I do agree with Floyd. I don't find anything he said particularly convincing when it comes to an actual cause, right? How do you...
Well, the problem is that he basically asserts that there is a God, and doesn't expect us to just expects us to accept that, and then he says God caused things. Is essentially what he did.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
He assumes that we already agree with him that there is a God, and just by the way, he's the one that pushed this all in motion. So therefore, wash your hands. We're all good to go.
But all the arguments that he said, right? Because initially he opened up with, the simplest explanation may be the correct one. Okay, fine. And then he said, well, he got onto his thing where he's like, well, I just provided an explanation. We don't know the mechanism, but I provided an explanation. I'm like, I just literally had the same argument with somebody where I was arguing for 4 days about universe farting fairies and fairies farting universes into existence. I'm all, hey man, that offers the same explanatory power as what you just posited. I mean, why are we just supposed to accept that? Oh, here's what I'm positing, and now my work is done. And by the way, you can't disprove that. It sounds like Matt has been but it sounds like Floyd has gone like 30 rounds with Matt in the past already. Is that true, Floyd?
Yeah.
You seem to have a lot of experience with it.
Back and forth. Actually, the very first Google Plus Hangout I had, Matt Bell was in it, and he was worse than he was now. He was his classic self then, and I didn't know a thing about him, and I raised my voice, and it was my very first Hangout, and then at the end of it, I felt bad. It's like first impressions or lasting impressions, and I thought, boy, I kind of blew it. This is my first go around at Google Plus, and here I am raising my voice. I felt pretty bad about myself, and I apologized. I apologized to him in the room, but then like a week after seeing him, it's like, oh, okay, maybe it's not me.
It's definitely not you, Floyd.
Yeah.
He brings the worst out in people too, and that's the part that makes you feel bad. Is generally you're not like that. You don't get irate. We're not. I don't think none of us are overly aggressive or that kind of thing. And he brings out the worst in people. And then when he does, then he claims he's being censored.
Yeah, I mean he's just trying to be a bully. Is all it is.
That's pretty crazy stuff. So anyway, so we're all in agreement that Matt pretty much failed on the supernatural causation topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't even carry on a conversation long enough to present what his position was without being a jerk and causing just general chaos in the Hangout. He just doesn't know how to interact. So yeah, he loses by default.
I like when he started griping about having theists in here, and Turtle was like, "We just had a theist in here, and he was fine." But I give partial that to Christian anarchist silky smooth voice. Like, don't you think he should be hosting like an overnight jazz radio talk show? After hearing him talk, I'm like, you know what? Maybe there is something to this God thing.
Christian anarchist is a super nice guy. I've been in a couple of hangouts with him, and I've seen him in some hangouts. He's somebody who I think does his very best to present reasoned arguments and things. So I give my stamp of endorsement for him. Now I disagree with him on a whole lot of issues, but you can actually have a conversation with him. So he's
wonder what he's
a guy in the community.
I wonder what he is an anarchist against.
I don't
You know what I mean? Like, in the sense that, you know, if it's a government thing, which generally, you know, anarchists, you know, that kind of thing, but as a Christian, aren't you subscribing to the ultimate, you know, ultimate control scheme?
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, does anyone else have anything for supernatural causation?
No, I mean, I think though, with the Matt Bell thing kind of pointed out the whole problem is that, I mean, you can have a discussion about the causation or whatever, but if you don't have, if we don't even know what we're talking about to begin with and whether or not it exists, talking about whether or not it is causing something is kind of, to me, silly. But
yeah, and that was my point a while back with the possibility basket. I mean, anybody can say anything, you know, but at what point do you actually give it some traction? Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, so my possibility basket has a hole in it, and sometimes things just fall through it. I mean, honestly, like I hear stuff and it's kind of like, all right, whatever. For it to have any sort of traction to stay in the possibility basket, you got to come with something better than, well, I posited it, therefore, you know, I posited it with no mechanism or anything, therefore it, you know, has some clout.
Yeah, I mean, I leave it in the possibility basket, but I don't worry about it until there's actually something to make me think it might be something more than a possibility.
Yeah. But I'm arguing with a Christian too. Anyone hear of this guy Ernest Edwin?
Doesn't sound familiar.
No.
Okay. I'll be arguing with him for the rest of the day. But well, if that's all we got, I'm going to close the room down. Let you guys go. Thanks everyone for showing up, except for Matt because you're a douche.
Well, he added some entertainment value.
I know. Well, you know, it kind of was like the pinnacle of what we were talking about, right? Like, we got into generals and some specifics, and then we got we got, you know, well, I don't want to put Christian anarchists in the same boat as Matt Bell, but, you know, we got the ultimate, like, bullshit, you know? It's like, well, here's what I claim, but I'm not going to do any work, and I'm gonna ask you to disprove everything. So, it kind of proves the point to me, but anyway, thanks everyone for showing up. I'll see you next week, or, sorry, 2 weeks. Righto? Yep. All right, see ya.